can update it and edit it and all of that. Oh, what a blessing it is to be here today. And thank you, Andrea Putting, for being here with me. I will introduce you to her later. Welcome, everyone, to Love's Inner Voice, the path of self-discovery. And you know, we're all wanting to discover ourselves in each day. And today our focus is love. You know, when we show love to even one person a day, we make a change in the whole world. And we don't even know what that looks like because love is such powerful energy and has such powerful light. And so to honor that, that's what we want to do by learning our love's inner voice and learning to listen to that. And that's what this is all about. So let's start by taking some heart breaths. And if you don't know what that is, breathe in love's light through your heart into your lungs, all the way down to your feet, into every cell in Mother Earth, to the count of 4 or 5. Breathe out slowly and breathe out anything that you're ready to let go of today into the loving hands of light. Do that 3 or 4 times in the silence of light and love. Notice any change in your body as you do this. Notice how it might be opening and relaxing. Notice if there's anything that wants to speak to you. That's okay. If you have a notepad and pen, make a note of it, and you can deal with that later. What a blessing. Thank you all for being with me today, with us today. Take in another 2 or 3 breaths. And as you breathe out for the 3rd time, open your eyes, relax, and come back into the room. I'd like to share with you a quote from Alana Fairchild. She says, it's about creative choices, because that's what our life is all about, creative choices. No matter what is happening in your life or how powerless you may feel to bring about change, fear not. If you knew how much power you had, you would laugh with relief. Yeah, we got to believe it first, don't we? You don't have to control anything or anyone to feel empowered. Your power doesn't come from controlling outcomes. It comes from endless capacity to make free choices. What is your heart's choice in this moment? And you know, I love asking myself questions, because when I have feelings that are sort of overwhelming, or when I have thoughts that are kind of like going in gerbil circles or merry-go-rounds that are distracting, a lot of times I just have to pause and say, who are you? What is it that you have to teach me? What is my inner voice, love's inner voice wanting to tell me? Sometimes I forget to stop and listen. And that's something that we all do, I believe. And part of what we're here for is to give you tools to stop and listen, even if it's just reminders and even if it's just for today. And isn't that a wonderful gift? So thank you for being here again at Love's Inner Voice, the path to self-discovery. Because when we listen to ourselves, we discover best who we are for our good and the highest good of all. Because if I don't love myself and I don't learn who Brenda is, how the heck am I going to be there for anybody else?
This book is just terrific. It is called Discovery is Recovery: Brain, Emotion, and Spiritual Reflection Through the Creative Process. It is written by Brenda Balding. It is an insightful book that offers a transformative journey into understanding your own character, emotions, and desires. It's a great book to get your head straight. Start out 2024 being honest with the person you should be most honest with, and that is yourself.
It's kind of hard to do that when I don't even know who I am and that I love myself just as I am. And that's what we're here to help, to assist you to do. So my beautiful guest, Miss Andrea Putting, is a catalyst for transformational storytelling and story sharing. Sharing our story sometimes is the best thing that we can assist others with. And the founder of Chocolate and Coffee, a cultural harmony. Her best-selling and award-winning books, Cultural Harmony and Compassionate Purpose, weave together the threads of social mission and a quest for something even more in our lives. She believes in storytelling and she believes the impact of storytelling. She advocates for the unity and the potent impact of that. Because our stories are our true experiences. And that's really all we have to share with each other is the experience that we have in life, what we learned from it, what we chose to keep, and what we chose to let go of. That's part of our story. And if we don't share it, the one person who may need to hear it may not get the chance. And to me, that would be sad. She's a founder of Putting Words, a self-publishing house where she empowers emerging authors to carve out their own path of best-selling stories. Living in Melbourne, Australia, Andrea cherishes the company of her two grandchildren. She loves to talk about them, and there's good story around that too. I can see that makes her smile. I think of my great nieces and nephews, and they make me smile. And she says they keep her jumping in puddles. And puddles are sometimes my challenges, and they turn out to be my gifts. She is continually delighted in sharing chocolate and the spark of engaging conversations. And I'm hoping that we're going to have a very engaging conversation for all of you to enjoy. When I spoke to her a week and a half or so ago, she said that her first book, which is Compassionate Purpose, Discovering the Life of Fulfillment, is what she's moving back to because it truly is about honoring our purpose here in this body, in this life, in this moment, because that's all we have is this moment. So, Andrea, how do you follow your heart related to finding your purpose? And what suggestions do you have for our audience? And thank you for being here.
Thank you, Brenda. It's a real privilege and pleasure to be here with you on your beautiful show. Yeah, following my heart it's something really interesting with that, because I had this experience several years ago where I had all these psychics offer to give me readings. I was going through one of those patches in life, and I had 7 psychics within 2 months offer me free readings. It was nuts. Thought, great, I might get some direction here. In the end, they all gave me the same message: follow your heart. So I've been on that journey since, of working out, well, what on earth does that mean? What does it mean to follow your heart? And I know at the time it was like, oh my God, give me some more clues. But it was really about staying in touch with what was moving me, what was calling at my heart at any particular time. And for me, what happened not long after that was I founded Chocolate and Coffee Breaks, which, I say not long, an event happened not long after that. And then that led to me starting Chocolate and Coffee for Religious Harmony a year later. So, it still took time, but it was really a time of me stopping and listening to who I am and what's really important to me. So where I've been, who I am, and where I feel called to go in the future. And that can often be completely surprising. Simon Sinek says, start with why. Well, I'm saying go beyond the why, because sometimes those moments are not within your own experience. Sometimes they're not obvious, and you've got to be willing to listen to your heart's taking you somewhere that you had never thought you would be going. So it's following our hearts is something really special, and something that, I've talked to a lot of people through my podcast and that I was doing, and in my research and in the experiences that I've had of people seeing how they can follow their heart. And what happens then when they do, magical things happen. They transform their own lives and they transform other people's lives by just simply being who they are.
Easier said than done, right? Sometimes. Have you noticed when you were on your own path or with people that you've worked with, have memories or experiences in the past that they forgot about and then all of a sudden came up and blended in a way that they never thought of blending to give them the beginning of an answer? Have you seen any of that?
Yeah, I think that that's part of the process in looking at that I talk about in my book. It's part of that process of looking at those stories and looking about who's influenced you and what those experiences are, and then looking at your values and your strengths and the things that you're passionate about. There can often be a thread that we don't see. Now, for me, I was when I talk about going beyond the why, it was like, well, I started Chocolate and Coffee Day, which is all about doing something about prejudice that people have for other people. And I was like, well, I've never experienced prejudice because of who I am, a white Christian woman. I was brought up in what was the White Australia policy era, which, I don't want to go into that. But being a white Christian in Australia at my age, I just haven't experienced that. So why was it so important to me? And I could not figure it out. And so I just go, well, obviously it is beyond the why. It's not something that I will go back to and go, well, it's not my experience, so I'm not fighting it for that reason. But one day something occurred to me. I remembered a book that my father had written. Not so much written, but it's a technology of the 60s, I call it. It was put into a spiral book, and a flip chart kind of thing. And he was using that at church school material. And it was, why do some people hate me? And it was just this story of all these things that little girl liked to do. And it kept saying, well, why does she hate me? Why do people hate me? And she was a little Aboriginal girl, a black girl. And it was just simply left at that. It was because she was different in some way that people didn't like her. And I think that had a big impact on me. And when I stopped and thought about that story, I thought about my own childhood, and where we lived was was quite an ethnic area. We had a lot of new Australians coming into the area. And at the time, the new Australians were the Italians and the Greeks. It's in the 60s, so a lot of them were coming to Australia, and my classrooms were filled with mostly Italians. And the little girls that I played with over my back fence, I remember I climb up the back fence, and there was this whole different world of life. There was the concrete backyard, and there was the wine being made in the garage, and there's smells of garlic, and even the vegetables at that time, zucchinis and capsicums and things, were not part of our regular diet. So there was a whole lot of things that were there at my doorstep, which I didn't even think anything of. To me, I was just playing with three little girls.
Mhm.
They were my playmates. And I think that had a big influence. It's kind of, when I draw that in, it's like, well, I know at that time, there was a lot of Italians were called the wogs, and they had a bit of that, which didn't kind of washed over us. We didn't really understand that, and we might have said it, but we didn't really understand the connotations of it, because they were just, most of my playmates were Italians anyway. But I think that kind of sticks with me. It kind of goes through my life, so that, well, why are you hurting that person where they're just the same as me? So I've had that continuous thing of that flow in my life, and that kind of, that's the thread that I've drawn into the chocolate and coffee movement, chocolate and coffee day, chocolate and coffee breaks, is really my experience of seeing that and going, well, no, they're just my playmates. They're not different to me. And that's my only thing that I've been able to draw this to, is that I've had that experience of seeing the people that I was seen as no different were somehow being set aside as being different. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I like people to be treated with love and respect. So that's me drawing my stuff together. But I do see that, we pick up things and we don't know why something's important to us, but there's a thread there somewhere that,
Mhm.
if we tug the thread, it'll kind of, when you tug a thread, and it shows up way back down the thing, you just see this little
Yep.
tug in your fabric or your knitting or something. It's there, but we not necessarily know where it comes from.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And we are tapestries,
Mm.
and some of the threads and the colors I can look at and go, where did that come from? That's not even a color I like. I
Oh
want
yeah.
that be in my tapestry, and it's not like, I'm impartial to a lot of colors, but there are two or three colors like bright orange or something like that just kind of go, "Ugh." And I don't know why. Maybe because I'm a blue person and I love blues and purples and aquas and that kind of stuff, and orange just doesn't fit. And yet, orange is part of the rainbow, and orange is um, part of the sunsets,
And it's
orange and
beautiful.
red.
It's not
And
my
it's a
color
gorgeous
either.
color.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous color. So then it's really interesting to follow that thread like you did and see where's the tug coming from? And is there something here for me to learn about me, about why I see the world the way I do, how I see it, but why I see it the way I do. And that's then looking beyond the why, like you said, because
Yeah.
then I'm really learning about who I am and how I show up in the world. And then I can decide with choice how I want to show up in the world. And that can make all the difference to someone somewhere that I may not even know about because of the ripple effect of the kindness, compassion, love that I show to somebody just because. I don't even have to have a reason.
Yeah. And that
So,
ripple effect is so vital so that we don't know. We don't know what the impact we have on the world is
yeah.
and to other people. But as long as it comes from a positive place, we can be
Mhm.
assured that that impact that we have is there, that it's making a difference. We don't want to have negative impact because that ripples out as well. So
Right.
let's
It does.
keep that
Yeah.
love in our hearts and our love in our interactions with other people so that the ripples that go out are positive.
Yes, and the ripples that go out are totally selfless without any expectations of a response, without any expectations of hearing back that, wow, you did something good. Thank you for doing that. Da 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 da. It's like, wait a minute. Then that becomes about me and not about being of service to the world.
Absolutely.
And it's
Yeah.
finding that difference in that dance so that we can dance together in love and light and still have challenges that we can learn from.
Yes.
Because some of those tethers and some of those textures that make us up can be challenges when something triggers us, so to speak. So, can you talk to us a little bit about that and how you move from maybe this to this?
Huh. Yeah. There's a big question for me, Brenda. Thanks.
Answer it however
Yeah.
you like. It's a big question for anybody. So
Anybody.
it's
Yeah.
not, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's really for the whole audience to really look at when you're like this,
Mm.
what do you do about it? And how can you walk through it so that you're not showing anger and frustration at the world?
Yeah. So I'll go back to another story because we talked about story sharing. So I'm going to share stories. Is that I had this moment when I'd I'd gone back to school. My kids went to school, and when I'd finished, I was like, well, what am I doing with my life? And I actually went into a depression. And I would send my kids off to school, and I would come home and curl up in my bed and not be able to do anything. And I couldn't even go to the shop and do the shopping. My husband had to, with his busy schedule, still had to go and do the shopping because I couldn't do it. I could not leave the house. So it was only and I had studied naturopathy, so natural medicine. So I knew what to do about depression. I knew that I had to get up, I had to get dressed, I had to exercise, I had to eat properly. So, eventually I got myself doing that. But what really picked me up was when I started to get involved with community I started going to different activities and things so that I could be with people. But what really did it for me was volunteering.
Mhm.
So, and so when I refocused my life to be, instead of what is it that I need, what am I doing, what's for me, what's the best for me, how am I going to make a living, how am I going to do this, that, the other thing, it was about other people. How can I be of service to somebody else? And I'm finding that time and time again, that when everything else in our life is crazy, we stop and focus on somebody else. How can I be of service? It clicks to us. It changes the way we see things, the way we respond. And if I go back to, there's some research that was done by Dr. George Moll, a research psychologist, and he found that, he used ECG, all those plugs on the head to find out what it does to the brain when we are altruistic, when we're thinking about other people and doing good things for other people, how does it change the brain? He found that it sets off all the same neuropathways and the whole same chemical situation as when you have sex. So it really picks us up and makes us feel good. It creates those feel good endorphins in our body. So, when life's feeling a bit crappy, what can I do for somebody else?
Mhm.
How can I help somebody else? And then I have chocolate and coffee, so I can just go and give someone some chocolate and have a conversation with them, and I'm good.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's so true. I found the same thing. And it's also a way to heal ourselves
Yes,
when we put someone else first.
absolutely.
And isn't that what we're all about, is being of service in one way or another? I mean, just doing this and agreeing to be on this show with me, that's being of service. For us putting this show on for an audience, we're being of service to whoever shows up to watch.
Yeah.
We don't know how it may affect anybody. You were going to say?
Oh, I was just going to add into that, while we're talking about service and putting others first, that does not mean forget about yourself.
That's right.
You need to look after yourself, and you need to make sure that you have the time for yourself as well. Serving other people will lift you up if it's coming from the right place. Once it gets to obligation, well, there's some stuff that you've got to do out of obligation, especially when it comes around to families. You can get burnt out when it comes to obligation, but when you're giving for love's sake, because you want to, because it lifts you, that makes all the difference in the world.
Yep. And for us, it's about duty. What's your duty?
Yeah.
Like, as an eldest of seven, my duty, according to my mother, was to watch out for all my siblings when they left the house, keep them safe, and all of that. Well, I still am pulled to do that for my daughter, for my siblings, for my friends. And it's like, how is that serving them and how is that serving me? It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And those are core beliefs that I am choosing to transform so that I can use them to take care of me so that I can be of service to others more
Yeah.
fully and more completely.
Yes. And you
Not out
cannot
of,
be of service to others if you're not taking care of yourself. So
yep,
always make
yep,
sure there's time for you as well.
yeah. And it's really about the intention.
Absolutely.
Is the intention when I'm taking care of myself, going to exercise or walking with a friend or ABC, Is the intention to look good, to get praise because I'm doing all of this? Because, that kind of goes in the selfish bucket, in my experience, in my brain's opinion. Or is it about allowing myself to grow and to learn and to take care of this beautiful body that I've been gifted with so that I can be present for others in whatever way they need it?
Yes.
So intention is so important. And I think you talk about that in some of your books, and you talked about it in your stories too, haven't you, about intention?
Yeah, I guess I have. Yes, absolutely. One of the things, because while we're talking about compassionate purpose, my book, Compassionate Purpose, the other one, Compassionate Prosperity, When Success is Not Enough, is directed towards business. And what's really important there is that businesses go into social mission with the right intention. If they go into it with the thought of, well, all the research shows that if we have a social mission, we'll have better profit, we'll have better productivity, we'll have better innovation, the employees will be happier, or, and they just end up ticking it off. But consumers feel that. The people who are their employees feel that. They're not connected to it. So the intention is about making money, not about doing good. It's not about what is really at the core of who they are and what they're about. It's about making money. So that is where it doesn't work. And that's where a lot of corporate social responsibility falls down, is because they're just ticking off a box.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your
And it really
intention.
is about, intention.
Mm.
Where is it coming from? I don't do this for money. I mean, you're not showing up because you're making any money from this, for which I'm very grateful. It's more about sharing the wealth and that we've experienced, sharing our story about how our intention of spreading love and kindness and compassion in the world makes a difference, and how I and you and people around us that we know end up growing and blossoming in a new and different way.
Mm.
Isn't that wonderful? It just gives me chillies.
It's beautiful. It really does. If when your intention is to follow your heart and to allow love's inner voice to be heard within you,
Yeah.
then it does change our world. It really does. It lifts us up and takes us into new places. So do
It
that.
really does. It really does. Thank you for that. So, what suggestions can you give to anyone in our audience who feels called to make a difference and doesn't know where to start?
Well, I can help them with that. So there's a few things which, I outline in my book, of course, but I'll go through them basically. So there's lots of things that are important. One of the things that I've recently added to this thing is looking at what your love language is. So if you know what love languages are, and there's 5 different love languages: physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gift giving, and acts of service. If you look at which one is your love language, that can often be a bit of a guide in some ways, because if your love language is quality time, you don't want someone to say, go and raise $1 million or whatever, go and raise some money, because it just doesn't connect and you're just not going to feel it. You're not going to do that. If it's quality time, then you don't want to be sitting at your computer doing the database entry. You're not going to hang around. You're not going to keep doing it. So finding that match that. So the other things that are really important that I've always talked about is that looking at your story, looking at who has influenced in your life, what are those important times in your life, those different things that have influenced you, who you are. There's looking at your values. What's important to you in life? How do you see yourself? What are those driving values that you live every day that you don't even think about, but they're there, they're important to you? My brain's just gone quiet my brain's just gone quiet. So we've got the stories, the values, the strengths. So what are your strengths that you have, that things that you're really good at, that you love to do? Once again, we don't want to be doing those things that we don't love to do. So I want to be having this connection with somebody. Don't put me in a back room doing the database, because I'll go crazy. I can do that, but that's not going to be what I love to do. So think about those things that you really love to do that are your strengths. So, I always say, write a whole list of all your strengths and your skills, and then go through it and cross out the ones that you really don't want to be doing. Get rid of those. Don't focus on those. Just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should. Nothing worse than people coming to you and saying, "Oh, you'd be really good at this. Can you do this?" And you kind of feel, "Oh, well, okay, well, I can do that." But if it doesn't float your boat, don't do it. And the other one is your passions. What is it that really excites you and gets you moving in the morning? What are those things that light you up, that have you sitting on the edge of your seat, that you just want to do? Or or the other way, it can be the things that excite you, but the things that really get you going. Like when I hear someone being prejudiced to somebody, it's just like, I have to do something. So, your passions, what are those things that really bring up deep emotions in you? So they're the things I like to have people spend time on, to work on, and to look at all of those aspects. And then I pull it together with one very simple question that I ask everybody. I say it's simple. Sometimes it takes people a while to come up with the answer. If there was just one thing for you to fight for, what would it be? Yeah, it's a really good question. And because a lot of people go, "Oh, but there's this, that, the other thing." No, just get it down to this one thing. If you can get to that one thing, then you're going to find what it is that's most important to you, what it is that's going to drive you and keep you going, even when it's tough. Because when we want to make a difference, nothing in our life is smooth sailing. So we need something that's going to be still drawing on us, that's still going to be pulling us up, even when we're in the deep, dark hollows of our life. So, and I don't know, and sometimes these things, they just lift up, and once you've got all that, it's just kind of, it could take over your life. That's the warning, but there is nothing more satisfying, nothing more fulfilling in life than to do this. So, anything come up when I asked that question, Brenda?
Well, one thing came up was I can see why that would be so important. And what I've done when I've asked that type of question for myself to help me focus down is, once I've gotten that one focus for today or for the next 90 days or whatever the focus is, all of a sudden, if I can let the other things go, all of a sudden I'm noticing other things around that are there to answer that question and to help support that boat or that purpose. To me, it's a boat because I like the water, but to support that purpose. And all of a sudden, I'm getting answers that I didn't even know, of questions I didn't even know I had. until I narrowed it down to one thing. And all of a sudden, the universe or source or whatever we want to call it said, oh, she's got to focus. We can give her all this information now.
She's
Yippee!
got it.
She's got it. Have you found that to be true for you?
Oh, absolutely, because I'm a bit of a multi-potentialite. I have a lot of interests, a lot of different things,
Yep,
and
me too. Yeah.
I tend to get quite scattered because of that, and nothing seems to get achieved because I'm going from one thing to another. But when I then
Right.
just go, okay, let's just focus on what it is, this one thing that's calling out to me the most right now. Let's focus on that and let's see where that goes. And yeah, then the ideas can flow. But when I'm scattered and thinking about 20 different things at once, it just doesn't work. It's not a clear
Yeah,
path.
and yeah, thank you. Yeah, scattered. And um it's kind of like when I'm focused, I'm not a surfer, but I can see myself surfing the wave rather than getting caught by the wave. When I have a focus, when I have a purpose that's narrowed down, and that's a true gift, but it's also not limiting, because when I'm open to that purpose, all of a sudden other pieces of the puzzle come in, and it encourages me to stop and listen, because I only have that one thing there.
Yeah,
And I'm not going to hear what my heart has to tell me if I don't take a breath and listen.
absolutely.
And you talk about that in your purpose book, and you've talked about it with me about finding your purpose and celebrating who we are right now and the gifts that we have to share, those gifts that we may not even know we have to share. I
Mm,
mean, we all have wonderful experiences in life. We don't all have to have masters and PhDs and all of that kind of stuff to have experience to share with others.
that's so true. And that's
Yeah.
what's really important is knowing that what you have, where you are, what you have available to you is what is going to make a difference to somebody else.
Yeah. And we just don't know what that difference is going to look like.
No, no. And that's one thing that I always want to emphasize with people is while I talk about in my books and on my podcasts and things, I speak to people who are doing amazing things, and some of them are doing big, massive things. But I've also speak to people who are doing the little things, who are
Yeah.
somehow doing things in a small way. And I like to use one example of a lady growing flowers in her front yard and then taking them to hospitals to share with people. The way that you make a difference can be small, but it's what you're meant to be doing. And,
And
you
we,
know,
yeah, thank you
yeah,
for sharing that. And we don't know the extent that that gift to that person in the hospital created, the giant wave that that may have created for someone. We don't know.
yeah, we don't.
And to keep that hidden, or to keep it from not being supported to being, oh, that's nothing, she's not making it. Well, you know what? We don't know what difference. And for us to judge, somebody who's a superstar and do a comparison to somebody who's growing beautiful flowers in their garden and taking them to people who are in struggle times,
Mm,
it's about letting go of judgment and letting go of expectations and supporting energetically all of the good that's being done in the world without putting big or little, small, large, doesn't make any difference.
No. And there's a lot of good being done in the world, and we just have to
Yeah.
look for it. It's
Yep.
there.
Yep. Yep. Do you have any last words you'd like to share with our audience before we say goodbye?
Yes. Well, the thing that I always like to leave with people is that if you touch one person's life, this one, you change the world. You change it for yourself. You change it for the other person. And then that ripples out into the world and creates for you a legacy that you may never know that you have. So just one person, if you can touch one person's life, you are making a big difference in this world.
Yep. Thank you so much, Andrea. And, treat yourself. Treat yourself, everyone. Treat yourself and at least one other person with love today. Treat yourself and at least one other person with love and acceptance, kindness, whatever word works for you today. Thank you so much for being here. Be well. Take some good heart breaths as we let go of the day. Thank you, Andrea, so much for being here.
Thank you, Brenda. It really has been a joy.
Be well.
Thank
Love,
you.
love, and